Hi everybody, I am very pleased to have Niels Mani from A-Dato today in our Paris offices, and I wanted to talk about project management and about critical chain project management in particular, also about their solution, Lynx. And you explained us that in Lynx there are different levels of planning. Could you develop this notion?
In the end, it starts with plan what you know. Don't try to plan what you don't know. Mm-hmm. Plan that when you know it. Okay. And whereas a traditional approach that you really need a plan on the table back to back before you can even kick off your project, that will be, let's say, the conventional approach. If you do that, then you automatically will have to start making assumptions for things you really don't know, and the bigger those assumptions get, the more off your plan will be, the less buy-in you'll have for your plan, the less collaboration you'll have on your plan. So the whole idea of leveling is, first of all, to provide progressive planning. And the progressive planning says, let's just first define what we really know on a high level. Mm. And that is already good enough for our first assessment of what do we want to start and what not. As I said, focus is essential for success. And the sooner you bring your focus into your portfolio, that the more effect it can have.
So you start with a very high-level view of every project in your portfolio.
Yeah. If that is already very focused, then focusing down the line gets tenfold simpler than if you would allow every single thing that you can come up with to just flow into your work. Mm-hmm. And then you have to go prioritize between that huge amount of work that you have released onto the workflow. You need to bring that focus all the way at the beginning, and then you can see real benefits.
So one of the important aspects of critical chain is the ability to take into account resource limitations. And you do this at a high level, Lynx.
You do it at all levels. I don't know if it's really the official correct term, but we used to say you need to be able to make the calculation on the back of a cigar box. Mm. If it already doesn't fit on the back of a cigar box, just don't proceed.
Yes.
So the highest level really can be visualized as that cigar box. You already want to make that assessment there, and if it already doesn't fit there, don't bother starting it, because you're for sure going to overload your organization. But if it fits there, you can go on to the next stage. And the next level would be a bit more detailed schedule, or you maybe find out more in detail for specific parts that you're really expecting to be key. You can schedule it more in detail, then you can do your check over there. And that way you check it on all levels, but it really starts with the highest level, back of the cigar box level. If it doesn't fit there, don't bother to proceed.
Okay. And then if you want more details, as a project manager, you can still plan your projects in a traditional Gantt chart.
Yes, of course. Of course. In the end, getting to a specific moment in time, which we call the deadline or the delivery date, always requires some form of either dependencies, so basically we need to do A, B, C, D in a certain sequence and they all got their duration, or a specific volume to be done. Lynx as a software and also the critical chain philosophy, or for that matter, is a little bit more towards the projects which are based on the dependencies. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to focus on that part, but it doesn't mean that the other projects are not relevant. But if you get a certain set of dependencies, then you do really need to put them on the table. You want to get the critical chain on the table. You really want to see if these activities are delaying, and that's okay, because they're less directly impacting my due date. But if these activities are delaying, that's not okay, so I need to focus on that. So that's to be able, again, to bring that focus, which deviations matter, which deviations matter less. Mm-hmm. And if you then have that focus, to focus on what really matters, how to then collectively solve it, rather than in the traditional world, you would have a contract where we divide the scope, and this is your problem and that's somebody else's problem. This is your problem, you get to solve it. But you are not resource unconstrained. No. I think we need to, as a world, stop thinking that if we outsource work, that suddenly the resource constraint is lifted. We believe that if we are like a project management organization, we just outsource it to other companies, then suddenly everything that we ever called a resource constraint is gone. Now it just moved from your desk to another desk, and it's just as alive as it was on your desk.
So you have a high-level plan, then you have detailed plans to set priorities for resources, and then you also have a more detailed tier or level integrated with the agile framework, true?
Yeah, I have to, for a second, object against the more detailed. Not that I don't understand why you're saying it, but because it's a bit of a myth that it has to be more detailed.
Okay.
It can also perfectly be just a replacement of. See it this way, whereas maybe traditionally, if you want to manage a volume of work which wasn't really necessarily dependent, but it's still eligible for defining as a task. It's big enough as for a task, it has enough importance to be a task, it has enough weight of a task, it has resource side, so it can perfectly be a task. However, the problem when tasks are not really dependent on each other, like if you want to paint a house and you need to paint 10 rooms in that house, okay, maybe you could argue a room is a bit small for a task, but let's just say a room is eligible for a task. Then those 5 tasks are not really dependent. So if you want to put them in a conventional schedule, you and I both know that you need to get them in a sequence in some way. You can do that in your Gantt chart with your conventional method, and that will work absolutely fine. But it will just put a huge load on the project manager to put all those tasks in,
Definitely.
but also to change them all the time. Because what if you plan to do the living room first, Monday morning you arrive, you take your cup of coffee, you open your jar of paint, find out buggers, wrong color. What you don't want is then the painter to think, I can't do anything because I was supposed to do this today. You want him to change at that moment in time. So that sudden change is for me, but I'm not an agile expert, but for me that's what the core essentials of being agile is about. That you don't just stare at this prefix schedule and say, I'm sorry, I can't do it. This was my task for today. So it is not necessarily more level of detail, but it is the moment that you say, here it is no longer sensible to have real dependencies, they are not there. That's where you want to step to your third level, and that level is really where you're starting to manage your volume. It's 100 rooms in a house, it's 500 piles that need to be put into the ground for a new factory. It's that level where there is a sequence, but not a real dependency. Usually it comes down to being a notch more detailed, but it really doesn't have to be that way. It is really intended to prevent, and I would say, absurd schedules. Like today, day 1, pile 1, day 2, pile 2, day 2, pile 3.
So it means that all the tiny details, the small tasks, the one you want to delegate really to the experts, they can be displayed on a Kanban board, true?
Yeah, that's in a nutshell the idea. Because the way we look at it is the project only exists in the eye of the project manager. For you, I mean, I'm a project management. You do some project management by yourself. It's a thing, It's got a number, it's got a name, it's got a budget, and it's got a Gantt chart. So it's a thing. But for that technical expert, which is servicing, I don't even how many projects, it's not a thing. Yeah. It's just a number, and he's more interested in the job inside. So for him, a Gantt chart or a project chart, for that matter, it's a very strange way for him to perceive his information. Whereas a board, which just says, this is what you could be doing, this is what you're doing, and this is what's done, and these are the priorities. That we believe is a much nicer way to start that Monday morning.
To collaborate.
To collaborate, to work together, to say, hey, I see this is on the board, I don't have time for this, but it's red. So let me look around, hey, there's another guy sitting over there. I know he's maybe not the ideal painter, but he's idle at the moment, so let him help us to get this paint job out the door.
Okay, so you just talked about focus and collaboration, but according to you, what is the most important measure to foster collaboration and focus in organizations?
Foster is not the thing I would be focusing on, but I would rather say to ensure that you can have collaboration and focus. And to me, that kind of ties into the cigar box concept, and that is to be able to collaborate and to be able to focus, you should stop drowning people.
Yes.
Of course, it's the most simple analogy. If there's 500,000 priorities, then just finding a priority within a priority takes up your whole day and becomes your priority. You're getting nowhere. And at the same time, collaboration. We are people, and I think people are by far amazing. But we got our rough sides. And one of the things we don't do very well is dealing with pressure. We're people that are better at it, people that are worse at it, but in principle, the more pressure you put on people, the more difficult it gets for them to collaborate. So pressure is, for both of them, the most problematic key indicator, which is, in my opinion, something that you then want to make leading. So how do you make it leading? Because you can also measure pressure while that person is working. How busy are you? Super busy. You give it a score 1 to 10, you measure your pressure, no problem. But then you're too late because he's already super busy. So you want to bring that forward in your in your timeline, and that's what we do with that highest stage level within our scenario wizard. Okay, it sounds really like almost magic spooky scenario wizard, but what it basically does is it does the check with the principles of flow all the way at the beginning. Because if you already don't release things that can later on in your lagging indicator create that pressure, then you can allow people to focus and not to multitask. You can allow people to collaborate. So I really think that the success of a project starts at the moment of release. There you can make it, and from that moment on you can only break it.
I think it's an interesting conclusion. So control the working process, the number of projects running at the same time in an organization, and control the inflow to increase the outflow of projects.
I would say that wraps it up.
Okay. Thank you very much, Niels.
You're welcome.